We are all aware of just how low were expectations for Warrior's Spear following the beta. So imagine everyone's surprise when Spear suddenly became Warrior's best weapon. I'm probably not the only person who was hit with that realization harder than by the fact that both Graham and Kadim are voiced by Sam Bloody Regal. If you also want to be voiced by Sam Regal, check out Bullshit Brigade's Discord server in search for like-minded individuals, or consider financially supporting my desperate efforts to not get any skinnier. Nonetheless, Spear. For anyone who needs a refresher. Skill 1, you throw a spear. Skill 2, you throw a spear. Skill 3, you throw a spear. Skill 4, you make Sky throw spears for you.
Oh my god! Wow!
Skill 5, you don't throw a spear. Instead, you commit Swan Lake into Wpierdol Airlines combo and go on with your day. It's essentially full counter, except balanced. Best skills are as follows. If you play Core or Spellbreaker, you jump up and commit violence. If you play Berserker, you will get that damn mosquito eventually. And if you play Bladesworn, you cry in a corner. In all seriousness, spear skills are comically simple in theory, and like everything only start being noticeably more complex when applied in practice. Skill 2, Maiming Spear, for example, has a small delay between when casting finishes and when initial AoE hits the ground. I'm guessing it's left over after the beta, when cast times of all skills were longer, but I'm not entirely certain if that's intended behavior. A throwaway skill with 8 seconds of cooldown with damage of 3 autos doesn't really strike me as something that needs extra delay for balance reasons. Also, the explosion interaction on this skill doesn't work by the time of making this video, meaning there's one more reason for both Bladesworn enjoyers to call today a bad day. As much as making Bladesworn mains suffer is indeed consistent pattern for ArenaNet, I don't think that broken interaction was left broken on purpose. Bloody auto attacks trigger explosion interactions. If Arena wanted to stick it to Bladesworn again, they wouldn't. I'm guessing after all the God's work Arena did since beta, there was just not enough time to polish that one unimportant skill. Skill 3, Disrupting Throw, former Skill 4, didn't change much since beta. It's a skill as focused and straightforward as its bloody hitbox. It flies forward, it pierces targets, deals reasonable damage, immobilizes, and dazes for half a second the first moron you hit. Just remember, that thing is reflectable, so that moron might be you. Piercing projectiles might not be as easy to multi-hit with as big circular AoEs. After all, not every fight happens in a line to the checkout, but with new, faster cast time and no longer requiring interrupt to do shit, this skill ends up being rather good. In fact, I'd like more ground-targeted skills in this game to require some semblance of skill to bloody land. Looking at you, Necromancer. Moving onward, Skill 4, Spear Marshal's Support. Formerly known as Spear Marshal's skill issue, is now one of the most reliable damaging tools in Warrior's arsenal. And no, I'm not saying it in any hyperbolic or sarcastic way. The worst tracking in the game was brought up to the level of the best, and it now tracks exactly the same way things like Dragon's Tooth, Ray of Judgment and Hunter's Call track their targets. That said, you may remember what happened when Dragon's Tooth was allowed to actually do damage. And yes, the same thing is happening right now. Except now the skill in question doesn't have 8 seconds of cooldown, it has 20. Furthermore, the damage in question isn't even that far off the curse. Properly set up Dragon's Tooth can and will hit for just shy of 8000 damage. Why is it so hard to process that skills with more than twice the cooldown might deserve to do more than twice the damage, especially on a class that does pretty much nothing but damage? That said, I can recognize the bullshit when I see one, and I can attest to the fact that number 25, followed by a percentile, quite probably shouldn't ever appear on a skill tooltip or a competitive mode. In the end, the skill's damage plays very little role in the perceived overpoweredness of it. It's much more likely the frequent and reliable setups Spellbreaker enjoys alongside his newly received access to Alacrity from Relic of Rivers, reducing not only cooldown of Spear Marshals itself, but also all the egregious bullshit Spellbreakers always was and always will be inflicting upon the GW2 community. Further going, Spear Swipe I called earlier full counter but balanced, because that's basically what it is. It's a brief evasion window with CC on it. Except Spear Swipe cooldown, even with partial refund, is still longer than cooldown of counter. It doesn't apply on-burst trait effects, nor attach Magebane tether. It doesn't reset any other cooldown. It hits only in one direction, not 360 around the user, and its CC has shorter duration. How the hell we call Spear Swipe bloated when counter exists? The thing is fine, leave it alone. But not to stray too far away from pointing at Spellbreaker and side-eyeing the devs, area stores, the core burst possesses both the questionable 25% damage increase and evasion on cast. If you don't clock immediately what's the issue, I'll remind you that someone can reset its burst cooldown with full counter, meaning that the between burst, counter, spear swipe and its regular dodges, Spellbreaker possesses 5th levels of evasion, on top of which he can run stances, and on top of that, Relic of Rivers for Alacrity to reduce cooldown of all of that bullshit. Arena nerds just pulled off Frankensteinian stunt with this patch, creating an abomination the likes of which we haven't seen before. If this isn't going to convince the whole population of Tyria that Spellbreaker deserves to eat a nerf the likes of which Ascalon received to its human population, I don't know what will. Thankfully, on the Berserker's side of the aisle, burst is much less contentious issue. It's just a damage hose, now just fast enough not to cause problems with quickness upkeep in PvE. Only thing potentially worth questioning is the fact that with Sundering Burst, one wild throw can cap vulnerability on a target, which does lead to some interesting results. However, by this time you are already playing a glass cannon with 900 range. World is still very far from ending. Only gripe I have with Wild Throw is that only shoot forward limitation. I don't believe the skill would somehow end up breaking the game if that limitation wasn't in place. All the Wild Throw limitation accomplishes is making the skill break very occasionally due to unpredictable factors. The thing sometimes breaks for completely no reason. Last but not least, Bladesworn, like the unwanted weeb child he is, gets the shortest end of the stick, which is still pretty much just long enough to elevate him past irrelevance. Because Spear and Gunsaber have the same range and play pretty well off of each other, Bladesworn finally feels like a class and can finally rear its ugly head out of the dumpster. Serviceable is the best I can call him, but I'm pretty certain the cabal of combined 3 people who still main him will be overjoyed with the fact that their trash can is no longer the worst thing in the entire game. That title is rightfully returned to Braham, who as of Jantir Wild's release became a politician, justifying every piece of hate he ever received. Circling back into the summary, Spear is the best thing we warrior mains received since that one ancient geezer figured out you can bake the bread again. It both feels really good to use, with literally 2 exceptions of just maiming Spear and Wild Throw needing literally 1k world worth of polish, and it is surprisingly close to being balanced, as weapon on itself without Spellbreaker running amok is quite probably 2 passive adjustments away from the right spot. Anyhow, credit goes where the credit's due. Great bloody job, Arena nerds. You took the bar that was literally wedged into the ground, performed an Olympic gold javelin throw with it, and still managed to jump over the apex of its flight trajectory. There is no words to describe the level of improvement between Spear's beta and the live version, and after seeing how much the thing positively surpassed my expectations, I have just one humble request. Now the rest of the class, please. Thank you very much, and crabface out.